responsibility to clean the mess?
I don't think it is their responsibility. I think it is our responsibility to make sure that they clean the mess. Because here is what's going to happen. Barrow has been dragging his feet together with people like Dr. Cisse clearly said, who are more interested in occupying position than adhering to promises that are made to the Gambian people. Politicians have been given these blanket description as being dishonest. And if Barrow fails to honor the promise that he has made, what he is doing is cementing that belief that people have in politicians. Nobody forced Adama Barrow to agree to a 3-year term. The agreements were 3. 1, you will resign from your party, he did. 2, you will serve for 3 years. 3, you will not run the subsequent elections. Other than resigning from his party, which he knew if he did not do, parties like Doi would have backed out of the coalition. He did that conveniently. Now, to honor the other promises, he failed. But Barrow did not fail alone. He was helped in failing. And my friend, Mr. Dabo, has a lot to answer to that. Because when Dabo came, because you see, Dabo cannot have a personal opinion. Dabo is one of the most respected people in this country. He has one of the biggest followings in this country. When he emphatically made that statement that Barrow, if anybody wanted to force Barrow to resign, he would take the person to court. He didn't say, I'm going to kill somebody. He said, I'll take the person to court. What that did was, it inadvertently strengthened Barrow's hand. And of course, Dabo was the visible one. At least he was honest enough to come and tell us, you know what, this is what I believe. Ahmad Ba, on the other hand, was there, agreed to 3 years. Today, he would not talk about it. He would tell you, oh, nothing was signed. It wasn't signed anywhere. To Ahmad, it's not what is in the interest of the Gambia, but how long Ahmad would continue to serve as a minister.
And so
one more thing. We've seen my Fati, my comrade, upon his firing, had an interview. It was published in the Standard. I was talking about, you know, this agreement was central to why we came together. It's a moral issue, and I believe that people should adhere to promises that they made. Today, if you were to ask my 3 years or 5 years, you'll be hearing a different tune because today he has a job.
And so did you see this coming, the president changing the tone and the language from 5 years to now we have projects they're not done, we're not complete with the projects, and then the constitution says 5, and if I don't see of the 5 years, we'll have constitutional crisis. Did you see this coming?
Yeah, I saw it a mile away. I mean, and even a blind man could have seen it, because I'd been saying from the very start, we'd been experiencing with the coalition government. And the best example I can think of is what they have in France called cohabitation. So you bring people of various parties and put them together and have a coalition that works. The problem with our coalition is that you had party leaders. Now, in any democracy, a party leader is a leader in waiting. They want to take the country in a different direction. That's why they're in a different party from the ruling party or the party that's got the majority in parliament or in government. Now, so you get party leaders, you put them in a cabinet. A cabinet in our presidential system, indeed even in a prime ministerial system, is a reflection of the direction in which the leader of the country wants to take the country. So you've got people with opposing views from you who want to take the country in a different direction. You put them in leadership positions in the cabinet that is supposed to go in a certain direction. It's a recipe for chaos. This is chaos Gambian style. I mean, even the chaotic nature doesn't of itself make sense. Sometimes chaos is born out of a thought process that goes wrong. This was a disaster before it even happened. And to explain, just to answer, I know you didn't ask me this question, but about the trust that people have in politicians and politics. This is a very, very important point, because when politics fails, you have Rwanda. This is not a joke. And if people lose faith in politics and you say one thing and do another in office, then you're going to hear the siren voices of trouble and mischief and tribalism and division come to the fore, because at that point, politics has lost it. And this government still has time. It's on the precipice. It's about 5 minutes to midnight. It's not quite midnight yet.
And then, Sidi, I'm going to change the question a bit to economy. When this government came to power, first, every question asked is that we inherited a bankrupt country. Jammeh took everything. But that stopped now because there's a lot of international goodwill. We know money's been coming in, pledges and all those things. Now, even up to recently, I think a few days ago, the finance minister was speaking, talking about the economy and the gains, the government picking up the pieces, and now we are on the right track according to the authorities, including the finance minister. Is the country on the right track when it comes to reviving the economy?
I don't think so. But before I even proceed with that, let me just say that, let me acknowledge the fact that at least the growth rate is 6%, which they've touted all over the place, which is fine, because it's better certainly than 4% or 3%. But 6% with an inflation that has gone up now by another percentage point within the same period is now 7%. And if you look at the unemployment rate of young people, I mean, this is a recipe for disaster. Okay? 6% growth rate is nothing to write home about. Again, I'm going to say to them, well, kudos, you've made 6% rate. You're going to maintain it, at least to maintain that trajectory to a higher rate. But there are so many other underlying economic problems. One, the domestic debt is still on the rise. Inflation is on the rise. Unemployment is going up. I mean, really, I think the apart from that, also you have the budgetary deficit, domestic debt. These are all issues which need to be addressed. We are spending more with less. And I thought that there should have been an austerity program put into place a long time ago. We've been saying that. And the restructuring of the civil service was part and parcel of that. You cannot do things piecemeal. You have to look at the whole economy in a very comprehensive manner. But the restructuring of the civil service, they've dragged their feet. Even with the security sector reform.
Is that likely to put off our donors, international donors?
They already have. I can say that now. They already have, because they are very disappointed with the rate at which that we are putting in place those reforms that we promised them. Even in Brussels a year ago, they have not been really putting up to the expectations of our partners, bilaterally and multilaterally as well.
And then this will be my last round, and I'll ask everyone to be as brief as possible. You wrote about the issue of the former president's men, now these new president's men, the same people we've seen in some cases, the issue of an old wine, in a new bottle. In terms of directing the president, because we've seen some of the sensitive departments, ministries, in the hands of people who, I must say and I must stress that they've not been found guilty of anything yet by anybody, but then who people accuse of misleading and, aiding and abetting during the former regime, the former president. Sure. How much impact or how much damage do you think this has caused to the new government and the way it operates?
The damage is so deep and is so wide that I think it may actually be irredeemable. They're not going to be able to come back from that for two reasons. One is they should have nipped it in the bud as part of the reforms and as part of demonstrating a new leaf and also a new leadership in setting the tone from the very beginning. They didn't do that. Now, these guys are firmly entrenched, once again, because they've grown confident. They feel that, because of the they're shrouded in the blanket of impunity, and nothing can really touch them. That's the first thing. Secondly, by virtue of the fact that this new administration has decided to cozy up to even suspects, because if you are entrusted with public office, perception is important. So even if there's a semblance of doubt over your integrity, step aside, clear your name, and then come back in. This wasn't even the case. This was blatant. Individuals went to the Jotna Commission and said, I took money, I facilitated the theft of the state. I facilitated the raiding of the central bank. And that's what it was. They were bank robbers. So as a result, what has happened now is they are so firmly entrenched that the collusion between Jammeh and these culprits has now transcended and moved between these culprits and Barrow. So in order to disentangle himself from it, he cannot, because the mess now is so complicated and the waters are so muddied that I'm afraid the only way, and I know this sounds drastic, the only way of basically being able to free ourselves from the grip of endemic corruption, which was a legacy of Jammeh and is now being actually perpetuated and continued by Barrow, is to basically have a clean sweep, and that has to start at the top.
Dr. Cisse, do you believe that the damage is so huge that we might not be able to fix it again?
Like so has said, it's 5 minutes to midnight. And obviously there has been a lot of damage. And to be honest, to this government as well, to be very frank, most of the damage is not caused by this government. But the problem with this government is they did not find the solutions to solve this damage. And it's getting worse. We have problems in this country, like my brother here, Coach, has said. Every sector is collapsing. It's on the verge of collapsing. We're heading towards a catastrophe, environmental, economic, demographic, you name it. But what this government has failed to do really is to come up with solutions, like practical solutions to say, look, these are the problems. This is why the health sector is failing. This is why the education sector is failing. This is why we have this. And then what are the solutions? How do we prepare for the looming demographic crisis? We have a young population. A population today is 1.8 million. And within a generation, it will be 4 million. Are we preparing for that? Housing, infrastructure, education, health. Are we preparing for that? And for me, that is what scares me. It's not today. For me, when I think of how will the Gambia be in 2045, that is what I think about. And I think that is where we should start now to think of how do we build the Gambia for the future. Because the previous generation failed. They failed to build a country, and today we have this mess. Now, we don't want to fail the next generation.
And then, Coach, in December 2016, it happened. It was possible when nobody thought Jammeh could have been, ousted through the ballot box. Gambia, there was a lot of difference when it comes to our ideologies, individual differences, religious, tribal, whatever, But then everybody came together, at least overwhelming majority of Gambians left behind everything just to make sure that change happened, the change that they yearned for. And Barrow came, there was a lot of euphoria, jubilation, hope, everything. But then the tunes are different today. In your opinion, where do you think the government went wrong? At what stage do you think the government got off the cliff?
Well, they went wrong when they betrayed the aspirations of the people. And when they started going off the cliff was when everybody was interested in occupying ministerial positions rather than ensuring that the agenda of the coalition was adhered to. Because they had an agreement and they started breaking the agreement before even sitting in cabinet. And that's where everything went wrong. Everybody wanted to be the head chief, and before you know it, all hell broke loose. And the people that are paying the brunt of the price are the average Gambians.
And do you see any possibility or easy possibility of this problem getting fixed? Is it fixable?
It is fixable, but not by our current situation, because I don't think Barrow has demonstrated any desire to fix it, because Barrow is fixated on fixing his problem, which is entrenching himself in power. He has, as they say, he has a 15-year plan or agenda, so that's what he's working on. So that's the problem, and he doesn't have the capacity to do it.
Esuhal, I wouldn't name the name, but then a foreign friend who met Barrow and sat with him and, discussed with him. At the end of the meeting, when he came out, he told me, he looked me in the face and said, unfortunately, you guys are going to have a blank term and fix things and make things happen after this, when the next one comes. How discouraging, how hopeless are you when it comes to, especially service delivery during this regime?
So, I don't even have the adjectives to describe it. But the only thing I can think of, and it's sad, is the fact that, you fix the roof when the sun is shining, not when there's a deluge of rain coming down. And Barrow, for all intents and purposes, I don't think I'm breaking any journalistic rule, because I do have a view as a Gambian and as a person. It was a total disaster from the start. I mean, the man didn't have the capacity to absorb information to begin with, which is the first rule you need in politics. First, you return the information, you analyze it, you come up with possible solutions. Secondly, he couldn't surround himself with people with that same capacity and ability to deliver. So service delivery is always a step behind. And then what ends up happening is that the Gambia is constantly, if you notice, they put out a policy, then they retract it. It's done with a lot of bombast and noise. I mean, they talked about the think tank. What's the think tank and when is it? I mean, I think the thinking has tanked, if you ask me, because no one is doing any thinking clearly in the government. It's completely dissipated, it's disappeared, it's gone into the night, and this government has no clue about what to do. They're making up policy as they go on. It's obvious to anybody watching, and it's not, you don't even have to be, clued in to see what